We need to talk about Shadow and Bone. Quick disclaimer, in this video I'm talking about the TV series Shadow and Bone, which is an adaptation of the novel that came out in 2012. I haven't read the novel yet because there's over 300 holds on it at the library, so yeah. So if you haven't heard of Shadow and Bone, it's been in the top 10 on Netflix since it came out on April 23rd, and it's making me crazy. It's about a world divided by something called the Fold, which is a big black cloud full of monsters. Legend says only a sun summoner can get rid of the Fold, and at the end of episode 1, our protagonist Alina finds out she is the sun summoner. We follow Alina as she learns to use her power at the Little Palace with the help of the tall, dark, and handsome General Kirigan, and we follow her best friend Mal as he tries to get back to her. But today, I don't really want to talk about any of that, because while Mal, Alina, and the Fold hooked me in the first 2 minutes or 10 seconds of the show, I stayed and I rewatched for something else. I stayed for the third group of badass characters we get to follow, the Crows. But Nat, the Crows are side characters. Why would you watch a show for the side characters? I debated making this part of Bestseller Secrets because we're focusing only on side characters, but it's such a deep dive that I decided Bestseller Secrets is where it belongs. Because these side characters are just as, if not more, interesting and compelling than the protagonists, and they're a great example of how to develop and use side characters in your own stories. So settle in and get a snack or something, because we're going to talk about this Bestseller Secrets when it comes to developing side characters. And there's a lot to cover. We first meet the Crows 12 minutes into episode 1 at a club. Jesper is sitting at a table, and when a man offers Zemini coin, Jesper takes the money and explains that there have been counterfeits going around lately. So he'll have to prove the authenticity of the money by shooting it, because real Zemini coin can take a bullet. And then he throws the coin into the air and shoots it. In the middle of the club.
Oh, come on now. I've been here for hours. My money is good, no?
Zemini coin can take a bullet, but the knockoff.
How cool is that introduction? Okay, but it gets cooler. So the man with the counterfeit money is removed from the club, and Jesper reaches to take the money left on the table, and that's when a cane slams down and barely misses Jesper's hand. And this is when we meet Kaz.
No loud noises at the table, Jesper. Scare off the pigeons.
Would want that, boss.
When Kaz walks away, a man named Roddy stops him to tell him about a recently stolen painting worth 10,000 Kruga. He shows Kaz an image of the painting and explains that the thief who stole it would have to get past guards, fences, locked doors, and a security system made by a Grisha. Grisha, by the way, are people with abilities to manipulate different elements. Roddy says it was either a group effort or a ghost. Roddy says he has a buyer lined up, and Kaz basically says he's not interested, then walks to his office. When he steps inside, the camera pans over to the stolen painting on the wall. Kaz goes to the sink to wash his hands, and when he looks over his shoulder, he finds the room empty. But the next time we see behind Kaz, a woman appears.
Hello, Inej. What information do you have for me tonight?
Inej tells Kaz there's a 1,000,000 Kruga job. A wealthy merchant named Dreesen is looking for a crew to cross the Fold and bring something back. But we don't know what yet. Inej also tells Kaz she got the lead from one of the other girls at the menagerie. And through Inej trying to convince Kaz to buy out one of those girls like he did with her, we learn that Kaz is paying off Inej's indenture and thinks she's one of a kind. So, we've met all 3 crows in the span of 4 minutes. Did they hook you yet? What makes these introductions so good is that we learn crucial information about each character and we learn it fast. A lot of stories make the mistake of waiting too long to tell us why we should care about the characters. That's something we need to know immediately. So what did Shadow and Bone do in these 4 short minutes to show us these characters are worth our time? Let's start with Jesper. I don't know if you can tell, but I love Jesper. Jesper immediately catches our attention because he calls the man at the club out on his bluff. He throws the coin into the air and shoots it with amazing precision. Seriously, he shoots a hole through a flying coin. That's really cool. Jesper then reaches to take the money left on the table, at which point we already know Kaz stops him, but this shows us Jesper's motivation. Money. Throughout the series, he's motivated by getting paid, and in this scene, we get to see that in action. Every time you introduce a character, you make a promise to your audience, whether they're readers or viewers. This scene is a promise that now we know what Jesper cares about and what he's going to want through the rest of the story. It sets an expectation. We don't know why he wants it, but it's enough information to help his actions as a character make sense. Also, side note, in this scene we learn that Jesper isn't afraid of shooting a gun in a club full of people, which shows us he's bold and a little reckless. And we automatically want to follow a character like that because we know he'll be interesting and fun to watch. Next, Kaz. When Kaz slams his cane down on the table, there's an immediate contrast between him and the fun, smiling Jesper. And Jesper looks a little freaked out. In this quick exchange, Jesper refers to Kaz as boss, so we know they work together. So, the promise here is that we're going to see more of these characters together, because why tell us they work together if we're not going to revisit it? After this, Kaz is approached by Roddy, and he blows Roddy off. This detail is small, but it's so important. It shows that Kaz is very particular about what he does dedicate his time and energy to. He doesn't just do things because he can. He chooses what he cares about and what he goes after carefully. And this is a sign of well-written character motivation. See, when we don't understand what's motivating a character, it separates us from them. Everything we do, every decision we make, we have a reason, and characters are no different. Even though we don't know exactly what Kaz's motivation is yet, we can tell that it's there. And because of that, we're compelled to stay and see what happens next. This is where Inej comes in. When Kaz steps into his office, he looks over at the stolen painting before moving over to wash his hands. And that's when Inej appears, silently and stealthily, like a ghost. So without Inej even speaking a word, we already know so much about her. The small details of Kaz's behavior and the timing of her introduction tell us she is the one who stole the painting, so we already know she's highly skilled, and we know she has a tie to Kaz. In the next minute, we learn what that tie is. Kaz is paying off Inej's indenture at the menagerie, and this reveals Inej's motivation, which is gaining her freedom. When Inej tries to convince him to do the same for someone else, and Kaz says no, insisting that Inej is one of a kind, this re-emphasizes why we should care about her. So when Inej tells Kaz about the job and asks what their next step is, he says,
"You're the one of us who believes in a higher power. If we're going to survive a round trip through the fold, we'll need a miracle or two."
Boom! Another major motivator for Inej is revealed, her faith. And their plan is set in motion. So at this point, how many questions do you have buzzing around in your mind about these characters and what they'll do next? And that's just their introduction. So let's keep going. It gets better. At the end of episode 1, Kaz, Inej, and Jesper agree to take Dreesen's job and start searching for a safe way to cross the fold and bring back the Sun Summoner. In episode 2, a powerful man named Pekka Rollins comes to scare Kaz off the job, and we learn that Kaz and Pekka have made a deal in the past. But we don't know what it is yet. It's also worth noting that Pekka doesn't remember this deal, and that's the only reason Kaz is still alive. Inej is called to the menagerie to meet with Tantaline, the woman who owns her indenture, the woman who Kaz is paying. Tantaline reminds Inej that she can't leave Ketterdam until her indenture is fully paid, which Kaz can't afford to do yet. But Helene offers Inej freedom if she'll agree to kill a target who's driving business away from the menagerie. Inej accepts, then asks Jesper to do it. And Jesper says yes, but Kaz needs him for something else, so Inej leaves. Meanwhile, Kaz learns from a woman in his club that she and her daughter crossed the fold safely with the help of someone called the Conductor. But she doesn't know his real name, and he had them wear bags over their heads to keep his method of transportation secret. Kaz asks the woman for her name, some kind of lead, and she tells him they stayed with a stage performer named Poppy. So Kaz visits Poppy and asks about the Conductor. Poppy tells him they warned the Conductor to steer clear of Tantaline by sending a note. Kaz knows this means Helene had the Conductor followed. And we cut back to Inej, who unknowingly is getting ready to kill the Conductor, their only chance of getting across the fold alive, and winning 1,000,000 Kruga. That too. that's when this happens.
If you can't give me a lead, you can at least give me my freedom.
Saint Elizabeth, you follow the faith too. Please. What about a prayer can forgive murder?
Ask the saints for me.
Don't!
He's our way to Alina Starkov.
After this, Kaz visits Tante Aline and tells her he's taking Inej with him, and gives her collateral, the deed to the Crow Club. So why does all of this matter? Why do we care? Okay, I know that's so much information, and it might just feel like I'm info dumping on you, but everything I just said plays into writing amazing side characters. In fact, these side characters are so developed, it's easy to start thinking of them as other protagonists. And like I said, Alina and Mal are the main storyline, but I kept watching for the Crows. Because the Crows have depth. They're real people. They're conflicted, and they each have something to lose if the job doesn't work out. Kaz wants the money so he can pay off Inej's indenture, and he bet the Crow Club on the job. Inej wants her freedom, and she knows that the reward at the end of the job is her best chance at getting it. And Jesper wants to get paid. Same. It's valid. However, they also have secondary motivations underneath the surface that give them even more depth. For Kaz, it's revenge on Pekka Rollins, even though we don't know why yet. For Jesper, it's fun. He wants to have a good time and enjoy himself wherever he goes. And Inej doesn't want to kill anyone because of her faith. And let me tell you, this is one of the best uses of internal conflict and character motivation I have ever seen, because she does end up killing people, and it crushes her. The reason these characters are so compelling is because we know why we should care about them. We know what they value and what they want. We know their beliefs and their fears. We know why they work together, and we know they each have unique skills that make them irreplaceable members of the group. And the best part is, the characters create the story. I challenge you to find even one spot in the story where the Crows are not making decisions based on their internal conflict and overall motivation. You can't. Everything they do externally is driven by what's happening internally, their belief systems and ideals. And their belief systems and ideals are drastically different because they're shaped by what each of them went through. So while the primary plot is Alina learning how to be the Sun Summoner, I care so much more about the secondary plot and what's happening with the Crows. And that can seem counterintuitive because it feels like what Alina is doing in the story is so much bigger. But really, I care so much more about the Crows than Alina, because Alina's only motivation is getting back to Mal, and Mal's only motivation is getting back to Alina, and surprise, people are deeper than that. Shadow and Bone is a masterclass in crafting side characters. There's even a second small subplot that starts in like episode 6 with Nina and Matthias that I care about more than the protagonists. Because the side characters are so real. So, to recap, here's what this bestseller teaches us about creating side characters. 1. Strong motivation. Every side character needs to be motivated by something. The protagonist isn't the only one in the world with problems and goals. 2. Influence on the primary plot. The Crows eventually intersect with what's happening with Alina, and that's pretty cool. 3. Weaknesses. Your characters cannot be perfect. They have to have something holding them back, even if it's as small as Jesper ignoring responsibilities and doing whatever he wants instead. 4. Relationships. Ties to each other. Imagine what would happen if you locked all of your side characters in a room together. They're not just going to stand there and stare at the wall. They're going to talk, they're going to get to know each other, and they're going to start caring about each other. Side characters and their relationships with each other should be just as real as your protagonist. 5. An arc. It doesn't matter who the character is or why we care about them even. If they don't have an arc, the story's not going to be memorable. I think this is part of why Alina's storyline fell flat for me. She doesn't have very much of an arc. She begins the book with Mal, she ends the book with Mal, in the middle she finds out she's the Sun Summoner, and she gets manipulated. Big deal. However, if we look at the Crows, with Kaz we learn slowly but surely how important Inej and Jesper are to him. They're his family. When Inej starts worshipping Alina as a saint, Kaz, who's not religious, believes Alina's power is all a trick. By the end, he comes to the conclusion that Elena's power is real, and Inej isn't crazy for having faith. With Jesper, we slowly get under his fun, playful skin to see how much the crows matter to him. When Inej decides not to go back to Ketterdam with them, which doesn't play out, they still end up together, Jesper gets emotional. He cries because he's going to miss Inej. At the beginning of the show, I don't think I would have ever dreamed of seeing the fun, playful, money-loving Jesper cry. But by the end, we know that emotional depth is there. And Inej has maybe the biggest arc of them all. She goes from an indentured servant to a free woman, and along the way, she has to kill a couple people to protect the people she truly cares about. And she battles that shame throughout the story. She learns that she cares just as much about the crows as she does about her faith, and she wants to protect them. So there you have it, the secrets to developing compelling side characters as demonstrated beautifully by Shadow and Bone. If you guys haven't seen Shadow and Bone, please go watch it. Even if it's just for the crows. It's worth it. Tell me in the comments, who is your favorite side character from Shadow and Bone? Or, if you haven't seen it, who is your favorite side character from any other story? Until next time, happy trails.